Hello everybody, I'm Conquering History Games and welcome to part 8, I think, of the progress report for Kalterkrieg. Today we're going to be covering the economy, which means it's time for the cyberpunk music. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. This is another one written up by Kennedy, the head of coding. Hello, I am Kennedy, and welcome to the Progress Report on Economy, Mechanics, and Laws. We know this may be a bit boring to some of you, but trust me, we have developed some really cool things to drag Hearts of Iron 4 mechanics into the Cold War era. Don't worry, there won't just be text, we do have screenshots as well. The system. So what is the Kalterkrieg economic system? For over a year now, you may remember a teaser showing off an interface with a budget screen and real currency quite similar to the one right now in the New Order. We considered using that for a while, but ultimately moved away from that system as we felt that systems with currency were hard to integrate into game mechanics and were hard for the player to understand. With that in mind, our system uses only Hearts of Iron 4 mechanics. There are no variables to keep track of. In Kalterkrieg, factories are going to be exactly equivalent to GDP. At game start, Canada starts with about 45% of Germany's GDP and will therefore have 45% of Germany's factories. We have expanded the hard cap on building slots to 75, up from 25, and have nearly doubled the amount of factories in the game at the start to allow for more variance. Well, you might be asking, doesn't that mean you can have huge amounts of factories for building? Nope, and that is because of our next system, military spending. In order to simulate the increasing professionalization of militaries, the huge amount of money spent on defense, and to encourage the player and AI to keep militaries at acceptable levels, we have introduced military spending. This is an expanded version of what our friends over at Kaiserreich have implemented with their force limit mechanic. Battalions, planes, and ships will now cost continuous upkeep of civilian factories. Numbers are obviously still up in the air, and we will go through an extensive balancing phase, but as it stands, this is what it looks like. The idea is that military spending will always use about 1/3 of your civs. This will be higher for some countries and lower for others. The price that countries pay for militaries will also vary. Meta Effect has created a custom modifier that we can and will use in different content. Part of that is the military spending law. Militaries can be unprofessional, granting massive discounts on military spending while giving some fairly large military quality debuffs. This will be used for some African successor states and some other small countries. There is then semi-professional and then professional, which is in the middle. Germany will start at the professional level, which grants no buffs or debuffs. The next level up is semi-elite, which is where Canada is, and then the top is elite, which is where no nation is at the start of the game. The elite militaries must pay higher costs in civs, but are rewarded by strong combat bonuses. Here is a screenshot of this law, numbers subject to change, of course. The laws. Aside from the military spending law, there are also the other various laws. While military spending may make up around 1/3 of your civs, that still leaves an awful lot left. While base game makes them all be a part of one giant consumer goods law, we have divided that up into 6 separate laws to fine-tune your nation. The laws are as followed. Taxes. Business investment. Education. Social services. Healthcare. And finally, infrastructure. I have provided screenshots of each, but all 5 besides taxation will cost you an average 5% CGU, varying on the level, obviously, while providing a bonus the more you pay in CGU. For example, healthcare at its highest level will cost 8% CGU, but will give you a nice boost to stability, population growth, and political power gain. Here is a look at what Germany's laws look like at game start. The bonuses vary across the laws, but the formula is the same. Taxation is the same, but scales differently, with minimal taxation costing a lot in CGU, simulating the lack of government revenue, but giving nice bonuses, and high taxation giving you a buff with a negative CGU value, but giving some bad debuffs. If you couldn't follow that, the screenshot should make things clear enough. These laws will not be changeable manually, only through focuses, decisions, or events. GDP growth. As I said earlier, civilian factories are a direct correlation to GDP, so therefore, construction speed and the building of civs is basically GDP growth, right? Kind of. We have scaled back our use of construction speed as we don't want economies growing at the rate that they do in base game. Civs are still buildable, but are very expensive, taking a little over 5 years to complete with no bonuses. We recommend that you use your remaining civs to either expand your military, there is no hard cap on the military besides the amount of civs you have, or build infrastructure, military factories, or other buildings. We strongly recommend infrastructure because of the last mechanic I will introduce today. You might be asking yourself, how do economies grow if building civs is so expensive? Well, that's because we have built in organic growth into the game. Every 3 months, the game takes 0.5% of the number of civs that country has, multiplies it by the construction speed of that country, applies another modifier based on infrastructure, and then adds civilian factories equal to that number in a random state. Our base is 2% GDP growth each year, but that can and will vary. Because of the way we coded this mechanic, there is an element of randomness to it. Now you might be asking, what if a country has like 3 civs? How does 0.5% of that work? Well, if growth is less than 1 civ, then it carries over to the next quarter until it reaches 1. Some countries take 3 years to build their first through the system, but it will get progressively faster. Here is a screenshot of the tooltip. That's all for today. A massive thank you to our newly minted Icon Meister, Ancient Conqueror, for all of the icons here in this PR. He pumped out about 42 of them in 2 days. We know the mechanics explained here are a bit complicated, but it is important. We want to keep you all up to speed. So yeah, that's the progress report. Pretty short one, but yeah, you know, the expanded factory slots is now explained, which we brought up a couple of progress reports ago, and the military expending stuff. I think this is going to be a very interesting mechanic for limiting army growth. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how it compares with the Kaiserreich force limit for the factories. And also these these other icons here where they've split things up to where you have taxation and business subsidies and healthcare and education, stuff like that. This really reminds me of Equestria at War, and I mean that in a good way, where you have your science bracket, and then there's the education bracket, there's the industry bracket, and you know, I've said it, and I'm not the only one who's said it in the co-op, that you can't go wrong if you're doing something that's similar to Equestria at War, that is influenced by that. I'm not saying this is a direct influence, but you're not going too wrong if you're trying to copy Equestria at War. No, copy is such a bad word to use. You know what I'm saying? I'm praising this. I'm praising these policies changes. That's it for today. I'm Conquering History Games. See you next time. Bye.